Welcome to A View from the Summit, where we explore the unique relationships between animals and humans, whether it's an Olympic partner or couch buddy, a working companion or unique pet, a world champion or someone you think the world of. Join us for a look at animals in our lives. Brought to you by Summit Animal Health. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of View from the Summit. And we've got a pretty unique show today. It deals with veterans, horses, and a pretty incredible guy named Chris Reeder. But before I get there, I need to introduce my co-host, who is up there, Robin Benson. She's up in that north, and it's so warm up there. She just came in from sunbathing and got in regular clothes because she's been in her bathing attire. Robin, how warm is it up there?
Hey, it's you're not supposed to give my secrets away, but it's 45 degrees and sunny, which in northwestern Minnesota for February 1st is unheard of, actually. I don't know if it's record breaking, but it's pretty darn close. So we're all we saw swans today, and it's pretty crazy. And yeah, it's wonderful. We're soaking up the sun, and it's a special episode because we are able to come. I'm able to come live with you from Chris's place, and Chris lives just up the road from me, it turns out. Long story, I'm sure we'll get into it as we get into this, but wow, so cool to be right up the road from everything that is going on with what Chris is doing. So we're talking all about Chris. He's sitting right here. So we're not talking behind his back, but Steve, tell us a little bit. And then
Chris Reeder, Chris Reeder is a veteran, and he felt motivated, inclined, inspired, dedicated to do something for his fellow veterans that were suffering. And he started an organization called DTOM 220. Now, I know a little bit about that, in that every day 22 veterans commit suicide, and they do that because of the pain, both physical and emotional. And 220, Chris has set as his goal to get that down to zero. But he has started about this in an incredibly unique way. So Chris, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here and just doing what you do.
Thanks for having me. It's been a long, great partnership with Summit, and absolutely love you guys and working with you and the help that you give to the Veterans Ranch. And like you said, it was born just out of, I saw the struggles in myself after I was medically discharged. I lost my roommate when I was in the Navy. And so when I would volunteer at other organizations, I would ask them about questions about, we're not doing enough. What can we do different? And they would say, well, start your own if you don't like what we're doing. And so that's what we did.
Okay, so Chris did. So he does or practices something with a horse called the Draper method. And I would like for you to tell us about that, and then just give us a brief little introduction about the changes you see when you employ this Draper method. So go for it.
Okay. Draper method is founded by Terry Draper. He was an engineer, so he thinks a little outside the box. He retired early and started working on this horse program in his barn in Colorado. He developed it over 20 years. He did some work with Colorado State University on the EEG scan, showing different ways to show what the brain does before and after. Even looked at trying to do something with during the ride. But anyway, so he runs Horseback Miracles. He trains people in this method. The individual rides on these very specially trained horses facing backwards on a bareback pad in an arena, going around in a circle. Your forward motion, that your brain is always forward locomotion. And so by turning you around backwards, by either closing your eyes, we can take away some of the other senses, your brain really has a big struggle with this, and it resets that. It starts repairing some of the neural pathways. We can dump all that cortisol levels. I've got EEG scans that I can show you of my before and after of all my different areas of my brain for my traumatic brain injuries. It does wonders for me, and the stories that I can tell you about what it does for these veterans, and we talked about even some children with autism, anything neurological. We've had great success on dementia, and PTSD and traumatic brain injury. It's just life changing what it can do for these vets, and we don't charge our veterans a single penny. So it's just a way to give back and honor that oath that we took to take care of each other.
Wow. Tell us one little story, just one story of an individual coming to you, having a certain level of anxiety or PTSD or whatever, and they get on the horse, they ride around 2 or 3 times, they get off. Tell us a little story.
Okay. I've got a vet that came that was in his 70s. His wife and him had been married for 50 years. It was to the point where that she was going to have to put him in a home. Very aggressive acting out, traumatic brain injuries, dementia. Of course, they gave him the usual, you can take these pills, you can do this is what it is. And she just couldn't handle it anymore and didn't know how to take care of him, and couldn't leave him while she went to work. So she was going to put him in a home. So this was kind of the last ditch effort. Can we try it? So we got him on the horse, and we would only be able to go about 10 feet at a time, and he would have a episode. And we'd stop, we'd calm the horse down, call him down. We'd go another 10 feet, go another 10 feet. Pretty soon we're up to a quarter of the arena. Pretty soon we're halfway. So we work on this probably, I think at the beginning was 2 or 3 times a week. We had his brain scans, we had his MRIs from the hospital, so we knew what we were dealing with the brain atrophy, with the dementia, with the traumatic brain injury. So we had all of it going in. Within 6 months, he was driving his car again by himself. He would leave and go to the dump and do things on his own. His wife went back to work. He went to get his MRI done, his annual one, and the hospital told him, well, we've got a problem. Apparently our equipment broke, and so we have to send you to a different hospital for an MRI because ours isn't working. And so them not thinking anything of it, they said, okay, fine. So they went down to a larger city. After his MRI, they said, well, apparently our equipment's broke too. Your atrophy's gone. Your dementia has regressed. They said it's not possible, but we can't explain it. So to be able to see this firsthand, and now we're going to start here therapy sessions in a month or so when it warms up a little bit, but they're the first ones are like, we're there. You let us know when we can get in. This is the only thing that has ever worked and is working. And even though the medical professionals say it's not possible, it is possible. And who would have figured it's from riding backwards on a horse in a circle?
That's pretty incredible, really mind-blowing, and as a horse person, my first question is, how do the horses respond? Because I know horses are really sensitive to energy and nervousness and people who are not balanced. And so are they specially trained, and how do they respond when somebody like that is really uneasy on their back?
They are specially trained. It takes a lot. Steve did a video a long time ago about Max. And so Max had a widow that had just lost her husband. He took his life. And so she came for a session. And by the time we were done, Max was completely drenched in sweat.
Wow.
And he would stop every 10 feet and just go and nuzzle her boot and then go again. And he knew that she was struggling with this, and he was just absolutely wringing wet when he was done. Wow. So he absorbed all that
stress,
just everything she was going through, and she felt so much better when it was done. But then he was almost drained for days.
Yeah. So what do you do with the horses? Is there any kind of therapy or any kind of treatments you give them, or any kind of extra support to help them deal with that extra? Like if they're absorbing it, which I completely believe is possible, right? I see it in our horses, but if they're absorbing that and offloading it from the people riding them, how do you help the horses get rid of it?
We have some play equipment type things and fun things for them and treats and that they like and give them a room to run, can turn them out into the pasture so they can just be a horse and just run and not have any concerns. We have multiple pastures, both here at the Minnesota Ranch and at the South Dakota one, that they can run, which is important. We have 3 of them now that are trained, so we can have a rotation. When we first started, Max was the only one we had. And so a lot was riding on his shoulders. And next week he turns 23 years old. So thanks to Summit and Summit Max, that's what's keeping him going. And he does an amazing job. And now we've got Murphy and Booker. So Booker's 13, Murphy's 4. So we've got a ladder of horses that we can rotate out. We can train the younger ones. And Booker's so incredibly talented. He does it all voice command. You don't even have to hang on to him. You just talk to him and he does whatever. He's an Appaloosa. But the other 2 are medicine hat paints. Both Max and Murphy are. They look almost like twins, but just incredible what horses can do. And so everyone calls and says, well, I know I got a horse, or I know what, we do the same thing. And then you ask them or you show them a video or tell them, they're like, yeah, we don't do that.
Right. So what's the training like to get the horses to the point where they'll help, where they can be in the program?
They have to be a certain physical size. We always look at hip height. We look at width. So Western pleasure training is probably the best way to start them. We try to find ones that are Western pleasure trained, and then we can adjust from there. But we want that big, huge hip height. So when they crisscross their back feet in motion, their hips are swinging, and it creates this big swing, and that's what can neutralize the brain waves. So when a brain wave is going 35 hertz when you're completely stressed out and you're just losing everything, a normal brain wave's 8 to 12 hertz. So if you have PTSD, you're going to be 35 and above. So that's when you get the fight or flight mode, the acting out, the poor decisions, because it's all blocking your actual thought process in your brain. So you're actually relying on memories. You can't have a conscious thought and you can't think something through where people go, well, how come you did that? I don't understand. Or how come you do the same thing over and over again? It's because they're going to a memory that's hardwired in your brain saying this, when this happens, this is how I have to survive. And it's really hardwired into your brain with fight or flight. So what we can do with this is we can actually flip that empathy switch and we can turn that back on and we can relax and we can get rid of that. And it's just like night and day. And almost every one of them has a very, very big breakdown on the horse. And the horses know to stop and just let it happen, because it comes and it's uncontrollable, and you just have to hold on to them. And I got a fall belt on them and I'm hanging on to them and stuff, but you just have to ride it out and wait for that to pass, and then you work through it. And it's absolutely incredible to see. And I'm so blessed to be able to see it firsthand every single day. And like we talked about the young boy with autism, to see the change right there, it's not something that can be faked or anything, because the child has no idea what's going on, but it has made a huge difference in that little boy's life. And to be able to do this and not charge our vets a penny for it is just, to me, is such a blessing.
Yeah, that's incredible. So you talk about a lot of EEGs and brain scans, and do you work with medical professionals or doctors in partnership with what you do, or are you trained to read them? How does that play into the therapy progress and the progression of the person's healing?
We work with doctors that their primary care doctor that would read them or whatever. The EEG, Mr. Draper was working with Colorado State University. So he actually had his own EEG unit, which we would love to have one. A dry unit, I think, was running $50,000 to $75,000 for it. So when you go out there to his place, you would be able to use the EEG, and you'd be able to show that. So normally we're at a subjective thing saying, yeah, I feel better. How do you quantify feeling better, or that's making a difference other than your actions? But if we can show a scientifically proven method saying this is before, this is after, explain that. And still a lot of medical people are like, oh, that's just got to be something rigged up or something. I don't know how you can do that, but It's just really incredible to be able to show it from a medical scientific standpoint and prove that, other than just saying you feel
Well,
better.
probably part of the problem, Chris, is it involves an animal. And, there's a real prejudice uh, in the scientific community for an animal. I mean, how can that help? And you have to admit, just to give them their due, putting somebody on an animal backwards, and then it's welcome to the circus. Yeah, a little bit. You know what I mean?
It is.
But I know you personally, and I've seen videos of what you have accomplished, and it's just, I mean, you made my mouth drop open a minute ago when you said, when these individuals have their breakdown, the horse stops. That blows my mind, because they are so tuned in. So tell me about the relationship you have with these horses.
Oh, I don't know how you can explain that one. Max and I have been together now for 5 years, I think, working together. But each person's different. So Mr. Draper had his favorite horse he always used, which was Bingo. Bingo has now since passed away from old age, but he owned Max, and he's been doing this for so many years and decades, but Max and him did not work well together. When I started working with Max, it was like match made in heaven. He's perfect. And Mr. Draper goes, I don't get it. Why is he like that with you? So each person's different with what animal they work with. Murphy is just, to me, is amazing. Booker doesn't really care. He's just kind of whatever. I'll do whatever.
He's a class clown, right?
Which one's the 4-year-old?
Murphy.
Murphy.
And he's just got natural talent. Him and his brother and Big Red. I don't know if a lot of people followed that, but we lost Big Red this last summer. He slipped and fell while he was running at the South Dakota ranch, and fell into a panel during a lightning storm and broke his leg, and we had to put him down. So the two brothers had the most talent. They were Doc Bar horses. Their bloodlines are absolutely incredible, and they just make it look so easy. It's just amazing what they can do. And when you connect with that animal, and Max, he just wants to please, and he knows what he's supposed to do, and he knows what to do. And he's, Murphy kind of more or less shows off because it's so easy for him.
So they're aware that they're helping people. That's
oh yeah. Yeah, they can tell. Yeah. And the people just love all over them, because when they feel like that. I had someone come and write an article, and I put her on there, and she goes, okay, now how am I supposed to ever explain that? How I feel in that? She goes, I don't even know what to say. And I said, well, that's your job. I did my job. You figured it out.
You're the reporter.
You're the wordsmith.
Nationwide, it got picked up by the AP and went nationwide. And like you said, a lot of this with the circus thing, until we started winning national awards, and that came from the head of the American Legion Auxiliary, came the president and the national president. And when it affected her so greatly, she put us in for a national award that secretaries of defense and state first ladies have won. And here little DTOM wins that. And then people started paying attention. And we'll just say a very large hospital system that's known for research, that's locally close to us, said, okay, we've seen enough. We want to send a whole neurological team of doctors up there to study this. And we wouldn't let them do it, because they're going to want to charge everybody for it, and we give it away.
Okay. All right. It was going to be a therapy program. I mean,
they wanted to learn how to do it, and they wanted to do, because we've looked at other ways of doing it. How do you incorporate that instead of having it just be at DTOM or just be at Horseback Miracles? How do you reach more people, more locations? And so we've looked at that. Can you do it with a simulator? Can you do it with an artificial horse? Can you do it with a pod you sit in? I mean, there's all kinds of different things to look at, but they were very, very, very interested, because we were able to stop someone's seizures that this young lady was having once an hour, and she I think went 50 some days without one. And they're like, well, it's not even possible. Well, we hear that a lot, that it's not possible. And then they go, well, what did you do different? She goes, well, I rode backwards on a horse. And you should see the looks you get.
Welcome to the circus.
There's your circus.
Right.
So,
but it's just incredible to me with the horses.
Robin, come closer. Look at them. It's because you get off mic, and if you
Sorry.
yeah, that's okay.
Can you hear me now? All right. This is a new thing for me too, because we're sharing the screen. It's so cool to be right here because I've seen these horses in person and the operation, and they're really cool horses, and you can sense the energy. So when they are working with people, how much do you use the horse to give you like clues or keys to the person's progress or the person's responses? You know, because horses they'll give you signs, or they'll tell you ahead of time. Like, I know I've taught a lot of riding lessons and helped a lot of people. And if a person's really nervous, they might not at first seem nervous, but it's like electric seat. The horse will tell you by how they are. So
absolutely.
How much, I mean, it's your partner in this therapy,
Yes.
right? So how do you use, what do you look for in the horses to tell you how the person's doing, or if it's progressing in a way that you want or something?
I pay more attention to the actual rider and their body language and their posture, and to achieve different results if they're not getting what I want. It's very scientific where they have to sit to according to their withers. I mean, it could be a couple inches off and it affects them. But I can do different things to adjust their posture and affect them more. We can do different brain exercises that affects it more. I mean, so there's that. When you're talking about balance and stuff like that, some of them get up there and they're like a limp noodle, and so it's a challenge in the horse. Some of them get frustrated. They don't like it when the person's flopping all over, and the people do lose control and they don't know where they're at. When they come down off the horse, they have to sit on a stool because their legs are not working. So I'll have to pull them down and hold them and set them on a stool for a while. We did have an individual that we released from the facility too soon afterwards, and she rear-ended a car at the stop sign because she just couldn't function. And so now we make them sit there for 20 minutes or a half hour to kind of get their bearings back before we release them. But
Wow.
Another quick story too, when you're talking about seizures, there's another individual that flew up from Florida that was having seizures all the time, and one session over a weekend and she didn't have a seizure for 8 months. And the doctors are like, what'd you do? And of course there's the circus. She tells them, they're like, no, really, what'd you do?
You have a magic wand while you're out there with the horses. I mean, this truly is, there's obviously a lot of science behind it, but there's, like you say, the simulator and if you think about the type of conformation of the horse with the hip height and the way the motion is, I mean, riding forward on a horse for a long time, we work our cattle horseback. I've been lulled almost to sleep in the saddle. Like, there's a lot of motion there. And it's really incredible to me to think about how these special animals are they are the key to the whole thing, right?
And what you're saying about the sleep. So that's a big thing. And we tell people this, okay, here's what you're going to expect. You're going to expect to sleep a great amount of time, especially when you first start. And they're like, yeah, sure, whatever. We have a vet that came out and he said, I sleep 2 hours a night if I'm lucky. And usually it's not that. And we're telling him, okay, this is what's going to happen. He's like, I don't believe that. The next day I called to check in on him, didn't answer his phone. I'm like, what the heck? And all of a sudden he calls that night and he goes, I just slept for 26 hours straight.
Wow.
So, and he's doing amazing. I mean, it's just life-changing for him. So that what you're saying about the sleeping and your brain needs to sleep to repair itself. And on that EEG as well, not only can we show the different areas of the brain, but we can show the communication between the areas of the brain. So on one picture, it'll look like pixie sticks, that old whatever game where everything is all just twisted, all the neural pathways. And then the after, you can see that the neural pathways are opening. So it's the scientific part of it saying this is repairing. It's testing and checking to see if the pathways are open. So it's not like it's some made up thing.
So how long, when you do the therapy and a person like the person that came from Florida in a weekend got better, how long does that stick or hold? How many times do they have to come back and repeat it to make it last?
That's the magic question, because each person and each brain is different. And it even affects if they're on medication for something. Is it possible? But you work with them enough that you start out at 2-3 times a week if you can. If they're flying from like Florida or something where they're staying for a weekend, you can do 2 or 3 sessions over a weekend, and then they can come back in 2 months or whatever. Like with an individual from Minnesota that had night terrors every night. She would find out that when she would come, if she would do a session or 2, she would be fine for 8-9 weeks without a night terror. So then you set up a plan and go, okay, so now we got you to this point. Now we know every 2 months you need to come back for a session or 2. The gentleman with the dementia, we've got him down to where he was doing once every other week, 1 session. So it's all adjusting to what they need and what our goals are for them and what we monitor and keep track of. But it's all performance driven and what they need and how we get them there. So we adjust it accordingly, and then start new people at the beginning and just kind of rotate them through and change their amount of their sessions according to their needs.
So you do this for go ahead, Steve.
Do the individuals that come, do you keep them on the same horse, or do they have different experiences when they are on different horses in different sessions?
They do experience, because we went as far as using a quarter horse that was much smaller, a lot quicker feet and steps, was like a barrel horse type thing. So it would produce different results. So when you learn that, which one, because how big Booker is. He's gigantic. So you got bigger ones, you got smaller ones. Max is actually, I thought, was the biggest horse I ever seen in my life, until now he's like our smallest horse. But each one's different. Actually, we just got a Tennessee Walker donated to us, which to me is interesting to see if that gait would do it or give you a different rhythm. I think that would be amazing to figure out this summer. So we're going to try and see what she can do, because she is a very, very big, beautiful mare. But obviously they're way different than a Western pleasure type horse.
So do you have a rhythm or a like quick-footed, slow-footed, long stride, short stride type of rhythm of each horse that pairs better with certain conditions?
Roughly go into it knowing that I can expect to get this out of each horse, and we can speed them up, we can slow them down, we can do stopping and going, and it kind of washes. So we have different options, and we, like you said, which ones are quicker, which ones are going to be this and that. Max just kind of like, it's old hat, he's been doing it so long, he just does it, and I don't adjust his very much. Murphy, he's young and he's geared up. Booker, like I said, just doesn't care. Whatever you want, you just holler it out. He'll just do whatever you want.
He's awesome.
He can count. He can smile for everybody. He can do whatever you want. So,
do the patients become attached to an individual horse?
Very much so. Very, very much so.
Tell us about that.
And well, we've even got a couple mares that are Serenity's a little smaller. She was a West River horse, a quarter horse, and she was a little smaller, so they donated her. And her and Valor are very close, so we'll take like a veteran that's in a wheelchair or something and put them in the middle of the arena, and those two, just like a touch therapy, just love all over the vet. And it means so much to a vet that you're like, I can't put you on the horse, but I do have a veteran right now that finally reached out, and it's taken years of me talking to him and his friends, and he's been paralyzed since Vietnam, and he's like, I'm ready to try it. Okay, so now my brain's trying to figure out, engineering wise, how are we going to do this with a paralyzed veteran, get him on there and safely do this. So I've been working with some of my staff and volunteers about how to put in maybe a truss system up in the rafters that has a rail then that follows around with bungee cords. So if something happens, if he falls off, if whatever, he'd be hanging there by a bungee, but he would be safe. So to me, that would be incredible to do something with someone like that and see how it goes with them.
That's amazing. So
we have to know if you do this.
Yeah.
We have to
Everything's outside the box here. There's no, we do all kinds of weird stuff.
I love it.
we have to
How do people, like, two questions. One, you do all this for free for veterans. So how do you get your funding? Who supports it? How does that work? And the second one is, when people hear about it, how do you convince a veteran with challenging issues to get on backwards? Like, sometimes you know it's going to help them, but they have to be willing, right? It has to be their decision.
They have to be willing. Yep. And especially when you tell them, okay, so when and if you have, which usually is when, a meltdown on the horse, and so you've got these big strapping, very physically imposing vets that completely lose it, and it all comes out, and to get them to that point, and they're like, yeah, well, it's not going to happen to me. I don't. I was like, okay, that's fine. And then when it happens, they're like, I don't know what happened. I told you, but that's okay. But that's why we keep it so, we respect their anonymity so much. People can't come and watch. They can't be sitting up there spectating. We don't take videos and pictures. We don't share that. We don't sell that. Everyone goes, well, all you have to do is take some videos and sell them, and you guys would be doing great. Well, it's not worth it to me. This is what we're helping people, not selling their story and their pain. So, so the second question to that is, it's strictly off of donations and some grants and stuff, but no VA money, zero on the state money, zero on the federal money. VA said they're not interested in any remote chance at all. They don't care. They told us to quit calling them and asking. And ironically, lately, we've been getting some calls from the VA now that said, well, we'd like to send someone there now. It's like, okay, now you want to, but that's okay. Like you said, it's the when you're telling someone what you do and they're like, no way.
So I have to just say, I've seen in person, and if you're listening or watching today, I'm going to say it because Chris won't, or maybe he will, but if you feel led at all to give to this amazing, we'll put links in the show notes, but anything you want to, not horses, any financial assistance. Chris has a lot of horses here actually that aren't even used yet because his heart's huge. And at this point, they have the horses they need for the therapy, but the financial support, if you feel led to support veterans, this is an amazing way to do it, because they truly are changing lives in a way that, as you've heard, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around, but it's miraculous, right? For the people that are getting help. And so we would love to, blast this story. If you're listening, please share this. I'm going to jump in here. Share this with your friends. Share this with, if you know veterans. The program's going to be running in Aberdeen, South Dakota this summer, spring, summer. If you know veterans around that could use it, they can get a hold of Chris, because you're not just limited to this area, right?
That's right.
People, and his heart is amazingly huge to help people. So I feel like we all owe it to Chris and his organization to support the people who've supported us. And so, shameless plug, really, I'm grateful that we have you as neighbors. But if you're anywhere listening, we just strongly encourage you to check out the organization and really, help them keep providing this amazing therapy for people.
And,
so,
and it is amazing, and it may sound like, and it possibly could look like the circus, but the proof is in the results. And
Absolutely.
when you have these profound things like he's talking about, this man with dementia able to drive, people saying that their medical equipment is broken because he no longer appears injured. I don't know what more proof you need than something special is happening. And we do have to wrap this up and go, because Chris has an emergency phone call that's supposed to come in at any moment. And I know that Robin has to get back to her sunbathing up there in Minnesota.
Right.
Before the sun goes down.
But
I'm using the snow to reflect.
But again, Chris, thank you very much. We will come back to you to come on the show again, because we want to hear, you know, when you're able to take a paralyzed veteran and put on that horse. We want
That'd be incredible.
We want to know, because we care. And with that, Robin, any parting words? Again, thank you, Chris, for what you do. Please support Chris. Go to his website. It'll be in the show notes. Robin, any parting thoughts?
Man, I think we covered it all. The biggest thing is we know the power of animals and the connection with animals that sometimes we can't explain.
Mhm.
But if you've ever been around an animal of any kind, you can feel it. And so we're just eternally grateful to these horses that allow this to be possible, because that connection is healing. And if you've had a horse or a dog or a cat or gerbil or a mountain lion or whatever, you know, everybody gets attached to water buffalo, different things. But definitely follow the show, because we bring people on every week who have extraordinary connections and who share them in ways that are just absolutely incredible. And we will include in the show notes ways to get a hold of you on social media, your website, Chris. And if you have questions, reach out. He's incredibly knowledgeable, and just appreciate everybody who's listening and watching and supporting this show. So thanks, Steve. It's always a pleasure.
It's always fun.
The EEG scans are on the website too, so people can actually see my brain scans.
So we just thank you, Chris, for sure. We thank you for all of your service and the healing power you bring to those others who have served. We really appreciate it.
To be able to do it.
And
So
ladies
thanks,
and gentlemen, that's it this week for our View from the Summit. Make sure you come back next week, because who knows who'll be here. All right. Thank you very much. See y'all later.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
This program is made possible by Summit Animal Health. If you have a dog, cat, or horse with mobility issues, Summit Animal Health has the all-natural, drug-free solution that comes with a satisfaction guarantee. Summit Animal Health products are used by Olympic gold medal equestrians, leading rodeo stars, professional dog trainers and handlers, and people just like you. Whether working companion or couch potato, Summit Animal Health can keep them moving. Check them out online at summitanimals.com. New to Summit? Use the code VIEW15 and receive 15% off your initial order. We'll see you next week for another View from the Summit.